Maria H, thanks the 5. How do you recommend handling liberals and others who refuse to recognize Umberto Eco's 14 points of fascism, thinking it's too broad? I feel like you're subtweeting some people there. There's no such thing as an objective definition. The definitions that we use, we choose to use because they serve some utility. There's a purpose to them that brings value to us. Now, one thing that I've noticed when talking with fascists or noticing the history of fascist movements, it's that fascism, and especially fascist advocates, are ideologically incoherent, like massively so. If you take a look at what fascist movements have argued for historically, they vary hugely. And what fascist individuals argue for sometimes is like very contradictory, where people will talk about like socialist stuff, but then support fascist movements. It's like really, really complicated. Look at all like the Nazbol shit with like Dugan in Russia, or like look at the types of people who are fascists but support the USSR, right? This stuff's really complicated. The reason I think it's important to use the 14 points is because it's an effective way of distilling not the policy principles of fascism, but rather the cultural modes of behavior that feed into it, you know? The things that tend to be associated with it. It's more important, I think, to look at the vibes essentially. Now, is that very broad? Yes, because you're looking not at a specific, concrete, inclusive and exclusive definition. You're looking rather at like a pointers and warning signs. But I don't think that makes it useless at all. That's how we check for a lot of other stuff, isn't it? Are you being abused? Do you have depression? It's usually like if you're asked these questions by a therapist, they usually don't ask you like, they don't say like the definition of abuse or the definition of depression and just ask you if that's what you are, right? What they do is they ask you questions and they go through a list of points over and over. And you're very rarely going to be in line with every single like warning sign, but you'll often be in line with many of them. You go through symptoms, and if there's enough of it all together, it's, you know, it's then there's something to worry about. I think basically every political movement in history would adhere to at least one of Umberto Eco's 14 points. But if one is adhering to 10 of them, well, you know, that's a little further down the line, you know? Same with depression or abuse. Like, one of the abuse talking points is like, well, has your partner ever yelled at you? Well, I think most people have at some point either yelled at their partner or been yelled at by their partner. Like, people can argue when they're in healthy relationships. That's not abnormal at all. But it can still be a sign of other stuff. It's also possible to have an abusive relationship where people don't yell, but the point is it's about general indicators. The palingetic ultranationalism one is like a good, solid, concise definition, but I feel it's not as useful in understanding how fascist movements come about.